estimate. Remember he was talking about if this is overestimate, then this is what it should take. The word kind. Kind and species are two different things. The word kind, and that's the English word that's used, translated from the Hebrew, and that's the Hebrew word, that's what it means. English, English is a Germanic language, okay? It came about with the conquest of England by the Normans and the Saxons, the Normans being the French, the Saxons being the Germans. They were the last major invaders to England. They had to be able to communicate. The German language took most of, or created most of what we call English. So it's a Germanic language. Now the Germanic language falls in the family of Indo-European. When the folks of India were coming up through the Fertile Crescent and all doing spice trade, and they had to be able to communicate. So a lot of the words came from India. Now the original language of India, we are familiar with the word Sanskrit. Sanskrit, well, it's also known as Proto-Indo-European. So most of the words we have in English are of Proto-Indo-European roots, coming up from India to Europe, Europe to France and Germany, Germany into English. So we have to go back to the original meaning of the word kind, as it comes from Proto-Indo-European, and the actual word means gene. Same word we use today, gene, G-E-N-E. So we weren't looking at species, we were looking at genes. Gene means family. So when we're looking at the families that were taken, and he gave a few illustrations, but let's take a look at the equine family. Horses, donkeys, zebra. Same genes, same family, only needed 2 of those. Didn't need 2 donkeys, didn't need 2 zebras, didn't need 2 horses, just needed 2 because they share the same genes. They're the same family. So you eliminate 2 species right there. How about cattle, the bovine family? He mentioned a few. In the bovine family, you've got cattle, you've got bison, you've got yak, water buffalo, all horned antelope that have spiral horns are actual bovine. One of the original species that are, I mean, you look out there today, we drive the roads today, mostly we see Angus, we see Charolais, maybe Limousin, right? These are bred down from the original cow. Now, was this cow the representation on the ark? We don't know, but the original cow stood well over 6 foot tall at the shoulders, called an auroch. The last one died in, I think, the late 1800s in Europe. Used to range through the woodlands in Europe. So the auroch is also part of the bovine family, an actual progenitor of modern day cattle. You have the South African or the Indian cattle, the ones with the humps on the back, right? And you have the ones we have today up here. So that family of bovine, again, or the auroch, the cattle, the bison, the yak, the water buffalo, spiral horned antelope, those again are species of just needing 2, okay? How about the canine family? Canine family, you got the wolf, the coyote, the dingo, the jackal, the hyena, the dog. Didn't need 2 of each of those were species. You just needed 2. Later on, they developed these other species within the kind, and that's what we want to look at, the word kind. The camelid family, I think it's called. You have camels, you have llamas, alpacas, vicunas, guanacos. Again, you only need 2. These, after the ark, made what we have today. So we're looking at the word gene. He was being obligatory to those that said, oh, there's so many. He was giving them something by saying species. But yet, it's not species, it's kind, it's gene, it's family. And again, we saw where they will come to you. That was the passage. They will come to you. So Noah did not have to travel out to get them. Now, humans are different than any other creature created. We're the only creature created in the image of God. No other creature had been. No other creature had the abilities that God has. And when we say, well, okay, so what do we know about being in the image of God? We are called man. And again, the Sanskrit word, the word that man comes from is manu, M-A-N-U. And it doesn't matter what language you speak. In every language, the word man means mind, spirit, and soul. I had an opportunity to preach in a prison, teach in a prison. I was the substitute guy. Every week, somebody, in the congregation, okay, you got the first Sunday of the week, you got the second, you got the third, things like that. And whenever you'd be out of town, I was the substitute guy. Hey, can you sub in for me? Yeah, okay, I'll be there. And so I had mentioned, I use the chalkboard quite a lot when I'm in the prison and when I'm teaching. I like the chalkboard because I like writing these words out and have them understand the connection between these words and, the reality. Things we say that we don't even understand what we're saying a lot of times. I mean, with my age, I still look up words. I still hear words, think I know what it means, and have to look it up and say, that's not it. So when I said that in class, this particular class, there were 17 inmates. A lady always came with whatever gentleman was teaching for that weekend, the ladies from the congregation. She would prepare the Lord's Supper and bring it there, and she would be the one responsible for the Old Testament, New Testament Bible classes, the mail-in classes. I'm sure you've seen those before. So she was the one who was administratively handling that. So she was there, 17 inmates were there. I said that in that particular class, and there was a native, and there was a mix of non-native and native in the prison, and there was a native sitting right there, and he raised his hand, and he said, I'm Tlingit. Now, if you're in Alaska, you've got Athabaskan, you've got Tlingit, you've got a variety of tribes. He says, in my language, yes, that's what it means. In Tlingit, it means mind, spirit, and soul. So every language, man, comes from Manu. And that's the image that we were created in, mind, spirit, and soul. We were created, like God, to think. We have the ability to think. Animals can't think. They react, but we can think because we have a higher brain capacity. We can see color. Most animals cannot see color. That's a brain function. The eyes got to work with it there, of course, but somebody's colorblind, it's the brain. It's not the eyes normally. We can think, we can decide, we can act. That's the image of God. God thought, let us create. God decided that there was a right course to do. God acted by creating. Man has the same capability. Man can build a bridge. Never seen a giraffe build a bridge. Man can build a skyscraper, 50, 60 stories, maybe even taller. I've never seen a monkey do that, okay? Man is unique. And because man is unique, like God, he has this higher level of understanding. So when we look at what man knows and what man can do, it's that higher level of understanding that gets us into trouble. Remember the Tower of Babel? It's that higher level of understanding. Now, 2 weeks ago, the young men of the congregation conducted the evening service, right? Bryson, I believe it was, provided the lesson. And his lesson was on humility, or being humble. That is probably one of our biggest faults, that we think so much of ourselves. Unlike the animals, don't have that higher thinking plane. They don't have any problem with being humble. The word humble, again, another Sanskrit word. It comes from the word degam, D-H-G-H-E-M, degam, and it means dirt, earth. That's what humble means. And was that not how man was formed? From the dirt? We should be humble. We're dirt. Really. Okay, we're dirt that can think, we're dirt that can decide, we're dirt that can act, but we're dirt. The animals didn't have that problem. They obeyed. They were humble. The other word that we looked at is the animals that had the breath of life. He talked about that in there, and he eliminated, well, we don't need this group of animals, we don't need that group of animals, et cetera, but the breath of life. And we talked maybe the first lesson about nephesh, the Hebrew word, which means a living soul, and the opposite, nephilim, which means to cause to fall, therefore being a murderer. Okay, so we have nephesh being a living soul. But there's a little different of the breath of life being a living soul and nephesh. So in Hebrew, the word for a living soul does incorporate nephesh, but it is nishmat ruach chaim. Ruach means spirit, your energy, your life force. So that's what keeps you alive. The body without the spirit is dead. Absolutely, right? So it's the ruach, it's the spirit that causes the life force. Chaim is another word that we're very familiar with. You ever watch these TV shows and maybe Jews get together and they want to toast someone and they say, L'chaim, right? They hold up their glass. To life. Life, chaim. As a matter of fact, that is the name. Remember, who was the mother of all? What was her name? First woman. What was her name? Yeah. The mother of all. Yeah, it would be Eve, right? Okay. Her name is Chava. That means life. That's her name. Okay. So that is the word Chava, Chaim, same thing. It means life. So it is the breath of life. Nishmat ruach chaim is the breath of life. It is nephesh. It is a living soul. A little different than man's soul, meaning that it is just has life in it. Okay. So here we have this cataclysmic event about to happen. God warns the animals. They understand God. Why? Because they're His creation. God can talk to them. He even hears Abel's blood crying out from the soil. God hears it all. We can't hear it, but God can hear it. They can hear Him, He can hear them. And He knows when a sparrow falls to the ground. Okay? So they obey Him. They're getting ready to travel to get on this ark for this cataclysmic event. It's an apocalypse for them. It is for them an apocalypse. It is an epoch, EPOC 8, which we talked about last week. So we have to understand that these animals willingly obeyed, didn't give God any problem because they were humble. They were created that way. When we speak about humble, I'm reminded of Golda Meir. Remember in the 60s, right? Golda Meir of Israel. She said, "Don't be so humble. You're not that great." The problem is, humility is something that we should have. Some people have false humility. Animals don't have false humility. Okay? So we look at these animals willingly coming to the ark for God. Noah's not out collecting them up. So what do we got here? We have Noah's faith that first started to build the ark, and then Noah's faith to gather all this material together. It was all based on faith. He did what he did. He didn't know everything. He didn't know what was to come. Now, when somebody says, "Hey, I need you to spend the next of his lifespan," he was 500 to 600 when this all happened. He lived to 900 or something, a little bit less than his grandfather Methuselah. But roughly that equates to more than 10, up to 15 years of our earthly existence, as long as we live today. What if you were told, "I need you to do this thing for the next 15 years. Quit your job, stop doing what you're doing. Next 15 years, this is your project. Now, I'm going to destroy everything. You need to get ready for this." Well, don't we have questions? Wait a minute. Let's just kind of play, So Noah just willingly obeyed. Noah had faith. And, of course, he was found grace in the eyes of God, or was pleasing to the eyes of God. Now, we have to remember why this was happening in the first place. Why was God going to destroy the earth? Well, first of all, we have to go back to Genesis 6 and 5, and it says, and God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. Again, all the words that we think we know, if we look them up, do we really know what that word means? So let's take a look at it with some definitions in here. And God saw the wickedness. What's wickedness? Moral badness, falsehood, lies of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination, in other words, imagination are to form thoughts and to act on these thoughts. The thoughts are attention, devotion, consideration, deliberation. He was spending a lot of time thinking evil things and doing evil things. These thoughts of his heart, it's your center. It's who you are. You know, we don't deviate much from our center, who we are. We can act a certain way for a certain time, but then we go back to who we are. These people were centered on evil. That's who they were. So the thoughts of their heart was only evil, again, more badness, viciousness, continually. In other words, it was uninterrupted evil. Uninterrupted evil. That's why God decided to destroy. And because of this, God found Noah. Noah by faith did that. He was condemned. The world was condemned, rather, because of sin. Noah was the one to receive this salvation. Now, we said the Hebrew word 2 weeks ago, I think it was 3. The Hebrew word for ark is teva. Okay? Teva, which is Hebrew translated to lift up or to support. However, the literal translation of the letters means, behold, the covenant of life. So how does that affect us today? In the same manner that Noah was saved, he had to be in the ark. He had to be in the ark to be saved. Today, we have to be in Christ Jesus to be saved. The same thing. This unfolding of God's plan was taking place. Noah didn't know everything that we know today. We now know that the beginning and the end, the Alpha, the Omega, the Aleph and Tav in Hebrew, is Jesus Christ. He is everything that's in between. They didn't see these things. Remember we had that lesson on angels, and the angels desired, and desire means to crane your neck to look. They desired to look into these things. Even the angels didn't know what the outcome would be. Noah did what he did without knowing the outcome. Now, sometimes we do things that we should not do. And there was a movie, I don't know how many years it's been now, 15 years, maybe 20, Jurassic Park. You guys remember that movie, Jurassic Park, the first one? That man, that scientist, that entrepreneur, the one that wanted to create dinosaurs from their DNA, he was very proud of himself. He was very pleased that he was able to do something. But one of the questions that he was asked was, just because we can, should we? Just because we can commit evil, should we? And those are the things that we need to look at. And these are the things that these people should have asked themselves but failed to do so. So we'll pick up next week with